been extended to 15th April 2022. So if you've not yet applied for NSA 2022, this is a great time to get to know more about it, resolve any doubts that you may have, and finally hit the apply button. So I'll be quickly taking you through what the National Startup Awards 2022 is all about, and then answer your questions. How do we define deterrent? We are thinking adding something on less demand to make it as per the demand. So Startup India is the flagship initiative of the Government of India, which is intended to catalyze the startup culture and build a strong and inclusive ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship in India. The Startup India Action Plan was launched in 2016 with 19 action points and 3 primary pillars. The pillars are number 1, simplification and handholding, and this is done through easier compliance, easier exit process for startups, faster tracking of patent applications, legal support. The second pillar that we have is funding and incentives through exemptions on income tax and capital gain. And this is done through various schemes such as Fund of Funds and the Seed Fund scheme, the objective of which is to infuse more capital into the startup ecosystem. The third and final pillar of the Startup India initiative is the incubation and industry academia partnerships through the creation of numerous partnerships with incubators and innovation labs through events, competitions, and grants. Coming to the startup ecosystem in India, India is currently the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world, with more than 66,000 startups in the country. 45% of these startups actually come from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, and this showcases the depth and the spread of the startup spirit in our country. The 66,000 plus startups on an average generate about 11 jobs per startup. And as of today, we have more than 5.4 lakh users currently on the Startup India portal. So the first thing that a startup needs to do to be able to apply for the National Startup Awards or to be able to even avail any other Startup India benefit is to get recognized by DPIIT. And DPIIT recognition is therefore a prerequisite for applying to the National Startup Awards as well. And to understand this, it's also important to understand the definition of a startup according to DPIIT, based on which an entity becomes eligible to apply. So what is a startup? In this definition, there are 4 key elements. The first is, what kind of an entity are you? Are you a private limited company? Are you a limited liability partnership or a registered partnership? All these kinds of entities are eligible to be recognized as startups by DPIIT. Even a one-person company is also eligible to be recognized. The next key point is that the startup should not have passed 10 years from the date of incorporation. It also must not exceed a revenue of 100 crores in any given fiscal year. The fourth element is a subjective element. We say that a startup is an entity that's working towards innovation or improvement in either a product or a process, or it works towards scalability, job creation, or wealth creation. So this is how DPIIT defines a startup. So this is an overview of the recognition process. It's a very simple, fairly simple, straightforward process. There is an online application form on the Startup India website that you need to fill. In the form, you'll be asked some questions regarding your startups, how your startup generates revenue, what is the unique selling point of your startup, how is your startup innovative, So you need to be able to answer these questions with by staying in the given word limit, and you would also be required to upload certain documents. There's nothing, no such requirement, which is going to be cumbersome. We ask just for the basic documents like Aadhaar card of the authorized representative, the certificate of registration or incorporation of the entity. So once you submit the application, the team evaluates it, and depending upon whether the startup has submitted all required documents in the correct manner and answered all the required questions, the application is approved and the startup is then officially recognized by DPIIT. And of course, some of the key benefits, among the many other benefits that you'd be eligible to avail once you're a DPIT recognized startup, are government procurement, income tax benefits, ease in compliance regime, IPR, and patent benefits. Coming to the National Startup Awards, the National Startup Awards, it's an annual initiative by DPIT under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The objective of which is to identify, reward, and celebrate innovative and outstanding startups and ecosystem enablers, which include incubators and accelerators across the country. So the 2020 edition was the first ever edition of the National Startup Awards, and applications were invited from across 35 categories, and a total of 36 winners were selected from a group of 192 finalists. So these startups were provided dedicated handholding and support across 9 specific pillars. The first pillar of support being Investor Connect, through which over 100 startups were able to interact with and pitch to over 70 investors. And we had connected the startups to investors from organizations like Sequoia, SIDBI, Mumbai Angels Network, IVCA, and startups also received dedicated mentorship and guidance on various business areas from industry experts across organizations like Wiki, NASCOM, Indian Angel Network. And we also enabled startups to get connected to corporates and ministries and other departments to further explore opportunities that the different stakeholders in the startup ecosystem have to offer to startups. Startup India also has active bridges with 13 countries around the world, and the startups are also provided opportunities to explore these international markets for expansion through Startup India. Other than these benefits, startups are provided constant guidance and mentorship when it comes to regulatory dealings, how to utilize the host of additional Startup India benefits that are available, as well as being onboarded to the Startup India Showcase platform. There's also a show that was telecasted on Doordarshan called the Startup Champions, which highlighted the stories of more than 30 startups over a period of 12 weeks. This helped immensely with the kind of exposure that the startups receive, and in ensuring that their stories actually reach households across the country. The National Startup Awards 2021 identified and celebrated innovations across 15 sectors and 49 subsectors. And a total of 46 winners were selected from a group of 175 finalists. And the results for the National Startup Awards 2021 was announced in January this year. And currently, the host of winners and finalists are being provided dedicated handholding across 7 specific pillars. And these are Investor Connect, Mentorship, Government Connect, Unicorn Engagement, Corporate Connect, Capacity Development, and Brand Showcase. Coming to National Startup Awards 2022, the third edition of the National Startup Awards shall recognize and reward outstanding startups and enablers um, who have demonstrated exceptional capabilities, not just in terms of financial gains or financial impact, but also for measurable impact in the society. So, as you can see, these are some of the parameters based on which the National Startup Awards 2022 are going to be evaluating the applications. You can see that one of the parameters is inclusiveness and diversity. Uh, your startups would also be evaluated on the basis of how scalable the business models are, how innovative the solutions are, and what kind of an impact is it creating at the grassroots, whether it is social impact or environmental impact or economic impact. So the evaluation process is going to be very holistic. Financial impact, of course, that would be a key parameter as well, but these are also few things that are going to be considered. So we are accepting applications from startups across 17 sectors, 50 subsectors, and 7 special categories. And this year we've added 2 new sectors to the already existing list, which are construction and media and entertainment. So here are a list of our 7 special categories. We have women-led startups, impact in rural areas, campus-led startup, manufacturing excellence, innovation tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, and this includes preventive, diagnostic, therapeutic, and monitoring healthcare innovations. The sixth category being solution delivery in Indic languages, and the last special category being startups from Northeast and hilly states and union territories. So one startup in each of the subsectors is going to be declared as a winner, and each startup that's declared as the winner is going to be awarded a cash prize of INR 5 lakhs. Each incubator and accelerator that's declared as a winner is going to be awarded INR 15 lakhs. So here are some of the benefits that are going to be diverged to the startups who finally win the National Startup Awards. You'll be getting recognition, national recognition from the government of India for your contribution to the startup ecosystem in the country. You'll be winning a cash prize worth INR 5 lakhs. You'll be provided pitching opportunities to present to relevant public authorities, corporates, and investors, and also get potential pilot projects and work orders. It goes without saying you'll become a part of the coveted National Startup Awards community, and priority would be given to the winners and finalists for participation in all DPIT sponsored events, both national and international. Extensive hand-holding across the various pillars, which I just took you through, would be provided to all startups. And this includes investor pitching, mentorship, engagements with leading corporates, ministries, etc. Coming to the eligibility criteria for startups, I'd request you all to, everybody who's attending, to pay attention, especially to this bit, because this is something really important. It's also mentioned in our guidelines document on the National Startup Awards page. The eligibility criteria for startups. The first criteria is that the startup should be a DPIT recognized startup. And for getting DPIT recognized, you just have to, like I had said earlier, just have to go to the Startup India portal, or you have to fill the recognition form, answer the questions, upload the documents, certificate of incorporation or registration, or the partnership deed is mandatory to be submitted. And once you are a DPIT recognized startup, only then you'll be able to even start filling the form for the NSA 2022. The second criteria is that the entity must have a hardware or software product or a process solution that is present in the market. The entity must have all applicable trade-specific registrations, and this is something that we get quite a few queries about as well. That what are the kind of trade-specific registrations that we should be providing. So the key thing here is that it differs sector to sector, industry to industry. So whichever trade specific registrations apply to you, you can go and check for the same on the website of the relevant ministry or authority, and you have to upload the same. The fourth criteria is that there should not have been any default financially in the last 3 years, which are the financial years 2018-19, 2019-20, and 2020-2021. By the entity. So there should not have been any default by the entity or any of its promoters or any of their group entities. And in case your startup is less than 3 years old, you would be required to upload all available financial statements. In case your startup is less than a year old, then you would not have any audited financials. If that's the case, you'll be exempted from this requirement. However, if you have provisional financial statements that have been issued by your chartered accountant, the same may be uploaded then. Coming to the benefits of the National Startup Awards 2022 to incubators and accelerators. So first of all, you would be getting national recognition for contribution to the startup ecosystem in India from the government of India, and you'd be winning a cash prize worth INR 15 lakhs. And while and before awarding any startup or ecosystem enabler, an extensive due diligence is conducted in all areas. It includes the support that enablers provide to startups through funding, mentorship, and networking and other parameters. And this means a lot because it helps build trust in the enablers in the ecosystem, and it highlights the efforts that they have been putting to contribute to the ecosystem in the country. The NSA recognition would also help incubators and accelerators in promoting whatever good work they have been doing, their activities, their accelerator programs, their incubation programs. So it helps provide immense exposure to your activities. Finally, you'll become a part of the National Startup Awards community, and this community comprises finalists and winning startups from across sectors, subsectors, and categories. So, eligibility criteria for ecosystem enablers. The eligibility criteria for incubators and accelerators are largely the same. First of all, the incubator and the accelerator should be structured as an independent entity, meaning it could be a company, a public trust, or a society. But the point being that it should be an independent entity and not come under the group of any other company or entity. The incubator and the accelerators both should be operational for at least 2 years as on 1st January 2022. Finally, the incubator must have successfully graduated a minimum of 15 startups, and the accelerator must have successfully graduated a minimum of 10 startups. So this is the eligibility criteria for the ecosystem enablers. We now have come to an end of our presentation for the National Startup Awards 2022. There's a QR code given, and you'd be able to scan the QR code and go to the National Startup Awards 2022 webpage and apply. If you have any queries, feel free to reach out to us through the email that has been mentioned and the contact number that's mentioned. We'll now be answering your questions. We've been getting a lot of questions regarding the option for sectors and subsectors. So I'd just like to iterate this here. There are a total of 17 sectors and 50 subsectors from whom we are accepting, under whom we're accepting startup applications. It may be the case that the sector or subsector that your startup is working in, may not be, you may not find the exact match for that within our list of sectors and subsectors. The solution here would be to actually go through the details, the descriptions that have been mentioned under under each sector and subsector, figure out and select for yourself which is the sector that most closely aligns with the kind of work that your startup has been doing, and you should be able to apply under the closest sector then. So don't be disheartened if you are not able to find a sector that completely matches 100% matches the sector your startup is working in. The next closest option should definitely be working. Okay, so we're also getting questions regarding the number of categories and sectors that a startup can apply under. So a startup can apply only under one sector and one subsector. However, you can select up to two special categories. We've received a question whether registered partnerships can apply for NSA, even though you're not a private limited company. So yes, of course, there are three types of entities who are eligible for DPIT recognition, which are private limited companies, limited liability partnerships, and registered partnerships. If if your entity comes under any of these three entities, you're definitely welcome to apply for recognition and then for the National Startup Awards. So the application process is pretty simple. You would simply have to go to the National Startup Awards 2022 web page on the Startup India portal. There you would also find a detailed guidelines document. I would encourage everybody to actually read the guidelines document, as the document is pretty detailed and it should resolve your doubts, any doubts that you may have. On the same NSA 2022 web page, you would see the list of sectors and subsectors as well as the application button. And you'd simply have to click on that button and then the application form would open. You'd be required to fill the application form. Please ensure that when you fill in the application form, you're answering exactly what's being asked. So, for example, if there are questions that are asking about the startups work, the theme that the startup is working towards, how does the startup generate revenue, please ensure that you provide specific, unique answers to all of these questions. And when you're uploading any kind of a document or attachment, please ensure that the size for those attachments is proper. You may face issues if you're uploading attachments that are too large in size. So please keep a check on these things. So we've received a question that's asking that they are that the NSA 2022 application form asks for the CIN, but since the entity is not a private limited company, would it be okay if they provide the registration number? So of course, if you are a registered partnership, then it would be completely all right for you to provide the registration number of your entity. The CIN, although it's been mentioned as the corporate identification number, so that field accepts the relevant registration numbers and incorporation numbers from the eligible entities. So that should not be an issue. We've got a question that's asking whether the video submitted will be used internally for judging or will be made public. So the video, the pitch deck, all details that are submitted, everything will be used internally by the committee for evaluating the applications. None of it would be made public. Yes, your applications would get reviewed either way. So just ensure that the sector, subsector, and special category that you're applying under, that is relevant to what your startup actually does. As explained earlier, it does not need to be 100% aligned, but it needs to hold some relevance. So a lot of you also want to know more about the hand-holding support that is provided across pillars for winners and finalists. So the uh, hand-holding has already been provided to the finalists and winners of the 2020 edition, and it's currently being provided to the winners of the 2021 edition. And we provide support across pillars. And this includes Investor Connect. Like I had already said, we usually connect all these startups to investors so that they can pitch to them, connect with them, get mentored by industry experts. We also support startups in getting connected to the different ministries, corporates, and departments to explore what are the opportunities that these diverse stakeholders in the ecosystem can provide to startups. We also provide startups with the opportunity to pitch to investors in different countries because of the active international bridges we have. So, a host of such hand holding support is provided. So I see quite a few questions about trade registrations again. So as mentioned earlier, trade registration is something that differs sector to sector, industry to industry. For example, if you're an MSME, an MSME has different, quite specific trade registration requirements, which you'd be able to find on the website of the MSMEs. So you need to be able to go to the respective websites of the ministries or the departments and check for yourself that which are the trade specific registrations that are required for the kind of industry that you are working in. And this again differs. So we do not have any active or specific requirements that you would need to provide, X, Z registrations, but it has to be done with respect to the industry. Uh, Earlier, you'll be required to submit all financial statements, but they are exempted from providing any specific financial statement. However, if you do have a financial statement that's been authorized and signed by your CA, then you should be able to provide that as well. So, someone has asked a question whether sole proprietors are eligible to apply for insurance. So, if you're a sole proprietor, you may, get registered as a one-person company, which would As private limited companies, limited liability partnerships, and only registered partnerships, these three entities are eligible for recognition, eligible for applying startup awards as well. We're also receiving a couple of questions regarding the meaning of graduation of startups, what it means for incubators and accelerators. So when we say that a minimum of 10 or 15 or 20 startups should have been graduated by the incubators and accelerators, we do not specify what is the meaning of graduation here. We realize that all ecosystem enablers, incubators, accelerators, they have their own set of criteria for deciding that that they follow for evaluating or judging whether the startups have graduated or not. The only thing is when you're filling the application form, please ensure that you are specifying the criteria that's there, that your specific incubator accelerator follows for deciding that this is the kind of criteria that we use for showing that startups have graduated. So we've received a question which is asking whether we can participate with ideation phase, which is working on proof of concept. So in this case, a criteria is that your startup should, your product or service or your solution process should be there in the market. However, we do realize that there are different requirements for a product to be in the market, and this differs sector to sector. So, if you have a working proof of concept, we'd encourage you to apply to the National Startup Awards. Yes, you should be a DPID recognized startup before you apply for the National Startup Awards. And once you submit the recognition application, it gets processed within 3 to 4 days. But I'd highly encourage you to get done with this process as soon as you can, because there may be quite a few technical or otherwise glitches if you wait till the last moment to get recognized and then fill your NSA application. Mr. Surya Nanduri is asking how can mentors get connected with NSA participants? So, Mr. Surya, as part of our hand holding process, we are the ones who connect the NSA winners and finalists to our network of mentors, and these mentors are industry experts who come from various fields. They can be from incubators, accelerators, corporates, VC firms, so that the startups are able to get a holistic sense of learning from them. Mr. Satish is asking how can we get funds by using Startup India? So once you apply for the National Startup Awards, there are two parts to it. You would be the winners are provided a cash grant worth 5 lakhs, and even other than that, we connect in investors and VC firms and all other kinds of investment institutional agencies to our finalists and winners, so that they can take the discussion forward from them. We also from there, and we also give them pitching opportunities. So these are the different ways through which we enable our startups to raise funds from external sources. Mr. Anup Sharma is asking if there is any fee involved in applying. No, it's a completely free process. You do not have to pay anything to apply for the National Startup Awards. Ms. Saundarya is asking, will this be applicable to digital marketing agencies as well? So I'm not sure what exactly you're asking if it would be applicable, but regardless of that, all the rules that I'm talking about, all the eligibility criteria, everything is applicable to all startups across sectors and categories. There is no exception being made for any particular kind of entity or sector. Mr. Anup Sharma is also asking if we need paid customers and sales report. So, no, you do not need to provide anything specific or anything different than what's been asked for in the application form. Whatever the documents are, financial statements, if the financial statements specifically mention a certain document to be provided, you'd need to attach that, and there are no additional requirements other than that. Okay, so we're also getting a lot of questions about the recognition process. So the recognition process is simple. It's pretty straightforward. There are a couple of mandatory documents that you would need to submit, which is the authorization letter, the Aadhaar card of the authorized representative, and the letter of registration or incorporation for your entity. Other than this, you'll be required to answer a few questions, and according to the stage that you are in, you would be required to provide some pitch deck or proof of concept. And this is all that you need to provide for recognition. It's a fairly, like I said, it's a fairly simple process. And if there are any further queries regarding that, please feel free to reach out to us. So with this, we have reached the end to our of our AMA session now, and thank you so much to everybody who took out their time to join us today. And if there are any additional questions or you feel that your queries have not been resolved, then request you to reach out to us on the email ID that was shown earlier, and we'd be happy to resolve all your doubts. Thank you.